So once you have defined and captured the behavior, you need to quantify it. There are lots of methods for quantification. Even simple things like your informal judgment of, okay, that was good, this wasn't so good. Even if you're not putting number on it, is essentially quantification because you're making a distinction. You have some standard, implicit, perhaps vague, poorly defined criteria that you're using to judge whether this performance was acceptable or not. So think about that as our quantification. Not necessarily hard numbers, but a distinction, even in terms of order. So we can quantify to different levels of precision. We can count the number of correct answers, which is what we do on a multiple choice test all the time. We can compare the response to a model. So this is the ideal answer to an essay question. And I can look at your answer and compare it to the model and decide how well they match and quantify that. We have rubrics. I know you talked about a number of those yesterday, correct?
That's later today.
Oh, that's later today. So rubrics, we'll learn about later today, is a framework for trying to systematize, make more rigorous, more reproducible the process of quantifying very complex outcomes. And then there are checklists, which are kind of a simplified rubric. So let's take writing as a task. So one of we may have outcomes that can be best demonstrated by actually writing something. Maybe it's a decision making, an analysis of problem, of a political position. And so my performance assessment, you can assess my own performance here by your own rubric. But the question really needs to be stated clearly. And I can't emphasize this part enough. Clarity in the task is essential because ambiguity is going to leave the learner open to responding in different ways, and these may not be the ways that you expect. So whatever you're doing, multiple choice questions, complex, sophisticated behaviors, clarity in the task is essential. So work on that. And then in this writing task, you may constrain the task in various ways. You know, tell them how much space they've got, how many words, how much time. It can be completely wide open. So those kinds of constraints too will help control or define their behavior. But the key thing is, as a response to a task, this is very complex behavior to try to quantify. So there are a variety of scoring methods that you can use, and again, you'll talk about this more this afternoon. So you may have a global, holistic score just ranging from my sense that this is a very poor performance to a very strong, excellent one based on your prior performance as a judge. Or you may have a much more refined analytic scoring. And I'll try to demonstrate that with this one. So this is a task that you might give in a course, a psychology course, for example. So we're studying metacognition, and I want to assess your understanding of the term metacognition. So to do that, I'm going to ask you to rephrase it, to paraphrase it in your own words. How would you take this definition of metacognition and explain it in your own words? What does it mean to you? So we would have that task, and then we would have the writing, which might be a paragraph in length, and we might evaluate against this rubric. So remember we talked about it in terms of the dictionary's definition. So a very weak response would be someone who just repeated what the dictionary said. That's the minimal. And we would score that very low. As opposed to a response that contains everything in the dictionary definition, but it's well articulated of the definition and clearly stated and fleshes out for the individual the unique personal characteristics of that term. So, but a range of performance that you could spread out with some structure to guide how you assign these numbers. Another kind of task would be a presentation. Again, another very complex, very sophisticated performance that has multiple dimensions that might need a more sophisticated scoring rubric. So in this case, you might have a variety of dimensions that you want to judge a presentation on. Could be how accurate the information was, how articulate it was, how well the presentation flowed, a variety of very different dimensions. Some dimensions may be strong, some dimensions may be weak. But you could assess this performance on the basis of all of those. For each of those dimensions, you may have a scale of performance ranging from excellent all the way down to unacceptable. So again, more complex behavior, more complex performance requires more complex scoring or quantification.